I mean, there's a reason why I bought this movie studio, because we're going to be doing movies, we're going to be doing entertainment television.
Well, if I come back, I could be in the movies?
Yeah, no. But we have to get into the culture, to change the culture, because once you get to the news side and the election day, it's too late. You've already lost the argument. You know, you look at these things and you can't get anybody to care about that. You can't get anybody, you're having a really good intellectual argument. But most people, they don't care about it. Look, how do you change things when the president can look people in the eye and say, you have your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Right. It's obvious, it's clear, there's no question. He knew that was a lie when he said it, and nobody cares.
I would disagree that nobody cares. I would say that if you want to get your message out and you want to win elections, you have to take your message to people in a way they can understand it. So, for example, young people, if I go to a crowd of 1,000 people at a university and say, your taxes are too high and your regulations are too high and we should balance the budget, they're like, that doesn't affect me. But if I tell them, you know what, the government shouldn't be looking at your cell phone. The government shouldn't be looking at what you read unless they have a warrant. You have a right to privacy. Young people will wake up and they will listen to this. Republicans haven't gone to African Americans or to Hispanics and said, you know what, the war on drugs, big government, has had a racial outcome. It's disproportionately affected the poor and the black and the brown among us, and we need to have better criminal justice. That message will resonate with people. We haven't heard Republicans bringing that message. Republicans have no idea. But you know what, if they did, there are many people who are open among all these disaffected groups who really aren't steadfastly supporters of Obama or an ideology. I think they're open to listening, but we have to have a better message and a better presentation of it.
So let me give you some pushback then on something, because I agree with that, and I can't get away from traditional politicians fast enough. I think the traditional politicians have, especially the GOP, they betrayed me just as much as the Democrats betrayed the Democrats. And I think the Democrats are just at the place where I was about 2005. About 5 years into the Bush administration, I'm like, wait a minute. You know, the flag only works for so long, and then you start to see the results, and you're like, wait a minute, we're headed in the wrong direction. And I think Democrats are there as well. Both parties are a nightmare. You've got the GOP that is trying to do as much of that crushing of the small individual, just as much, not just as much, on the same path as the Democrats. And you're standing with Mitch McConnell. Why?
What I would say is that there is a third way, and it's out there. And I know people like you say, oh, well, why don't we just have a third party or a third way that just arises?
No, I think that we should be looking for the Charles Sumner, without the beatdown, that the Charles Sumner who will stand up and say, both of you guys. And if that means a third party,
houses, yes.
If it's a third party, great. But I think you can change it from the inside, but you got to be clear.
Right. But I think also that you can transform a party. There have been transformations. The parties have switched places many times throughout history. I've been there, and I've worked for a third party candidate, a guy that was my dad. It's very difficult. The laws are set against you. And in fact, the biggest obstacle to a third-party candidate is that the debates are now controlled by the Republican-Democrat Commission. When Perot was in the debates, it was the League of Women Voters. This was very quiet, but it happened. The debates will never be held by an independent commission again, and there will never be a third party allowed in them, because they were afraid that the two-party system would be destroyed, and it might, because so many people say, well, I like some of the stuff the Republicans say, but I like some of the stuff the Democrats say. Couldn't we put some of the best stuff together and have a different way? But there's so many legal sort of obstacles to that. But I think that if you were to have someone who tried to get a national message that said, you know what, we just need to turn over in office. We need term limits. We need reading the bills. We need single purpose bills. I think all of a sudden you would see people rally from both parties to a candidate.